The Toronto Raptors have a problem. After going through a disaster offseason where yet another key free agent leaves for absolutely nothing, the team could be facing an even worse situation next summer if they don't rectify their errors. So, how can they fix it? Let's get into it. Welcome everybody to Amateur Hour Sports. This is the YouTube channel that is dedicated to Toronto Raptors coverage, and it's also the YouTube channel that just hit 15,000 subscribers. Thank you so much to everybody in this amazing community for helping us hit this outstanding milestone. I'm so grateful for the support I get consistently on this channel and for all the people here to hear my thoughts on the Raptors. I truly cannot thank everybody enough. But unfortunately, we have to get into some more dire topics concerning the Toronto Raptors, and it is about the contract situations that are brewing for this team that the front office has really backed themselves down into in the last year or so. It's been a pretty gross mismanagement of assets in the post-championship era, and now we're really starting to feel the heat from all of the poor decision making that came from the Raptors front office as it comes to asset management. And we saw the latest in the mishandling of assets with Fred VanVleet leaving the team for free in the offseason to join the Houston Rockets after there were so many questions around the trade deadline about the direction of this team, and reporters asking Masai Ujiri specifically how he plans to evade the possibility of losing players for free. And ultimately, Masai Ujiri never really gave a proper answer how he was going to handle that, and it kind of felt like, I wouldn't want to call it necessarily ego, but it really felt as though there was that just expectation that the players would want to remain in Toronto. For Fred VanVleet, it seemed like he did want to stay in Toronto, but when 43 million reasons a year presented themselves, Fred VanVleet really got an offer he could not refuse from the Houston Rockets, and there's a potential for that to happen once again in the next offseason with the Raptors, and that could be an even worse offseason than what we've had here as far as asset management are concerned. Sure, Dennis Schroeder's been brought in, sure, we brought in Jalen McDaniels, drafted Grady Dick, all these things are great, but losing a player of Fred VanVleet's caliber for absolutely nothing is a complete failure by the front office. So, in order to go through what the situation could be next season, then there are a few things that we need to discuss as far as this current Raptors team and why this situation, to me, looks so dire for the upcoming season. First of all, we need to discuss Pascal Siakam. We need to talk about OG Anunoby. We need to talk about the possibility of Masai Ujiri maybe being able to keep both. And then we need to talk about the full-scale problem of what could arise in the next offseason. It's not just Siakam and Anunoby. But to fully understand this situation, we need to understand what the situation is, first of all, for the player that has been most prominent in the news for the Raptors, and that is Pascal Siakam. So we all know Pascal Siakam is extension eligible in the offseason, and there's all these discussions and rumors about Pascal Siakam getting traded. The Raptors may be going in a little bit of a retool phase here and wanting to make sure they get something for Siakam now rather than nothing potentially in the next offseason. But more problems arise when it comes to Pascal Siakam's extension. If Siakam had made an All-NBA team this season, he would have been in line for a Supermax extension with the Raptors, which I'm sure he would have gotten, and I'm sure that he would have signed. But because he did not get that All-NBA status, he still cannot get that Supermax, although he now has one more year to try and get it. If Pascal Siakam makes All-NBA this season, well, that is a Supermax eligible player, and we just saw what Supermax eligible players are eligible to make when we saw Jaylen Brown sign the richest contract in NBA history. Well, Pascal Siakam, if he makes All-NBA this season with the Raptors, he is in line for the same contract that Jaylen Brown got. And there's all these discussions about, are these players worth it? Is Jaylen Brown overpaid? Would Pascal Siakam then be overpaid if he were to sign the contract? The issue is that, number one, if a player qualifies for a Supermax, it means they have achieved the necessary requirements to actually make Supermax money. So it's hard to argue against a player who is eligible for a Supermax not receiving that Supermax when they have fit the criteria to receive that pay. Second of all, when it comes to this situation, I believe Pascal Siakam is a better player than Jaylen Brown. So, in any sort of discussions with Siakam as far as his contract goes, well, if Jaylen Brown is getting that money, then surely Pascal Siakam can also be worth that money. But I said specifically, if he has an All-NBA season with the Raptors, he is in line for a Supermax extension. But it is specifically tied to the Raptors, and this is why the Raptors are finding it so hard to get a good value out of Siakam right now. Pascal Siakam has made it explicitly clear that he has no intention of signing an extension with whichever team that trades for him. The reason he is saying this is because he does not want to go anywhere. And the reason he doesn't want to go anywhere is because, sure, maybe he likes Toronto, but ultimately he cannot be Supermax eligible, all NBA or not, if he goes to a team, because he needs to be on the Raptors to be Supermax eligible. The Supermax extension is an incentive for players to remain with their team after being there for a certain number of years, which Pascal Siakam, obviously being drafted by the Raptors, has met that criteria. If he were to get traded to another team, then all of a sudden that would go out the window. So Siakam wants to be in Toronto because he wants to be eligible for a Supermax, and he's only going to be eligible for a Supermax if he makes all NBA this season. Going along with maybe Supermax eligibility, Pascal Siakam is the number one guy in Toronto. If he gets traded, he's likely going to a team where he no longer would be the number one guy, and making an all NBA appearance would be more difficult for the player to achieve. So right now, the Raptors can offer Pascal Siakam a 4-year, $192 million extension on top of the $37.9 million he's owed this season. So that would be around $230 million over the next 5 years for him to sign that contract. But again, if he were to make All-NBA this season, he would be Supermax eligible for a 5-year contract worth $304 million. So there's no reason for Pascal Siakam to sign a contract now because, well, he's going to try to make All-NBA. If he makes All-NBA, he's eligible for that monster extension. If he plays out this season with the Raptors and doesn't make All-NBA, well, he's still eligible for a 5-year, $248 million contract, which is $18 million more than what he would be getting if he were to sign that 4-year, $192 million extension right now. So, as far as Pascal Siakam goes, there's no reason for him to sign an extension because he's going to want to play out this season and try to make All-NBA. And there's no reason for him to want to go to another team because that takes away all of his Supermax eligibility. So Siakam is going to try to stay here, and the Raptors, because of all of these reasons, probably aren't going to be able to get great value out of Siakam and likely won't be able to trade him and will be facing his free agency in the upcoming summer. Honestly, if the Raptors want to keep Siakam and are worried about him leaving for free, it might be better for him to make All-NBA because then he has a reason to stay rather than if any team can offer him the same amount of money, he could want to go somewhere else on a more necessarily possibly competitive team. But that's why the situation is so difficult for Siakam. With OG Anunoby, it becomes a little bit more clear as to what the situation is. The Raptors can offer OG Anunoby right now a max extension worth 4 years, $116.9 million. The start of that contract in its first year would be $26.7 million. I have incorrectly said in the past that it'd be $26.7 million a year. It's actually closer to $30 million a year for this contract as a result of the value presented there. So OG Anunoby, as far as this contract were to be concerned, I think this is one where he would probably consider signing this summer, especially when you consider the fact that OG Anunoby has such a long history of injuries. If there is difficulties in signing Pascal Siakam this summer and you're so worried about his free agency next summer, you have to get one of these guys locked down. Like, you can't go into an offseason where both of these players are looking to get free agent status and see what sort of value is out there for them. And OG Anunoby is one where every team in the league pretty much is going to be lining up with an offer to try and give the player because they understand like this is the perfect complementary player for them to go forward in the future and just have that all defense caliber player who can knock down threes, who can get to the rim. This is the perfect complementary player that every contending team is going to want, even non-contending teams like the Indiana Pacers, who have been such a fan of OG Anunoby in the past. So the OG Anunoby situation is complicated because, well, sure, you can offer that amount of money today, but given the amount of teams that are going to be interested in the player, opportunities could open up in the summer that he wants to explore, maybe an opportunity to find a role bigger than what he would have in Toronto. So complications come for OG Anunoby. So can Masai Ujiri sign both of these players? That's the big question, and that's where the difficulties are going to lie in this whole ordeal, because on top of Siakam not wanting to sign a contract this summer, like, I'd be shocked if Siakam were to sign a contract. And I'd be shocked if the Raptors traded him because they're not going to get a great value for the player at the moment. With OG Anunoby, it would be less surprising, but I'd still be a little bit surprised to see him sign a contract. So yes, it is possible to sign both of these players, but there's going to be extreme difficulties in gathering the finances for them, especially when you consider the fact that as of right now, Gary Trent Jr. is going to become a free agent at the end of the season. I believe that there is an extension in play for him to sign, for him to stay with the team long term. But as of recording, as of July 31st, today's date, Gary Trent Jr. has not signed his contract with the Raptors, and therefore his contract expires at the end of the season. And if that wasn't bad enough as far as the financial capabilities of this team go, well, after this season, Scotty Barnes is extension eligible, and after winning Rookie of the Year a year ago, this is a player that is likely going to be looking for a rookie max extension. So a lot of problems are starting to brew in Toronto here, but how did we get into this situation? Well, it's been accumulation of mishandling of assets in the past that have gotten us to this point where we are so desperate to work on keeping these players, and we are so desperate to keep these guys. Of course, players that eventually their contracts are going to run out. But the way things have been structured here with the Raptors has culminated into these events where we are consistently losing these players for free, whether it's Fred VanVleet, Marc Gasol, Serge Ibaka, and to a lesser extent, because there's not much we could have done about this, Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green. You don't get the full value out of Kyle Lowry when you sign and trade him to the Heat for Precious Achiuwa and Goran Dragic, when you could have gotten a much bigger sum of parts at the trade deadline that season, but you insisted on keeping Lowry at the 2021 deadline just for Lowry to sit out pretty much the rest of the season. So the way the assets have been handled by the Raptors have backed us down into this corner where we are a non-competitive team, really, that is going to probably struggle to make the playoffs this season, but still has the full commitment from the front office to try and go win games, because they've been teetering on contending or rebuilding for years now. They've never fully committed in a specific direction, and now we're at the point where no direction has been chosen, and with no first-round pick to fall back on this season, and not really a good enough team to be a contender this season, the team is now stuck in that middle section that they were just waiting and waiting and waiting on a decision. Well, now the decision has been made for them, and they are going nowhere. And it seems as though, based on the whole situation, they're going nowhere fast. And the trajectory right now puts this team in a situation where it could be an absolute disaster of an offseason in 2024. And as much as I said, what can they do to fix it? There's really no way to fix it. They put themselves in this situation, and they're going to have to do their best to limit the amount of damage they get over the next 365 days or so. So what do you guys make of this whole Raptors situation? I like being the more positive, optimistic guy in this Raptors community, the whole Raptors fan base online, but it's really tough to do right now. So let me know if you agree or disagree with me in the comments down below. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more Raptors content just like this. We just hit 15,000 subscribers, and now we start the road to 16,000. Better yet, the major milestone next in 20,000 subscribers. 15,000 people already enjoy. Why wouldn't you as well? Get on the board today with the Amateur Hour Army, and I'll see you again very soon for another video.